Yo, I wish I had some more light, but I just thought about this, and this is a late video. I know, it's late at night, but California people, maybe you're up laying in bed watching some Instagram live videos. Or maybe you'll watch this another time when it's not live, but hey, still going to be informative. So, I realized that I think my car is pretty stock, but it's not. There's definitely cars that are way more modified than mine, but there's definitely a lot of people who ask me about Mustang stuff. Hello, Jackson. But there's a lot of people who ask me about Mustang stuff, specifically my car, and I think that there's a huge bridge, or a gap to bridge between stock and what I think is necessary for a Mustang drift car. And there's a lot of mistakes that I made that can be easily avoided by just skipping, buying the stupid crap that, honestly, like the stuff that's most available for these things is always like the wrong thing for this car. So that's why I want to go through and kind of like say the progression that I've had with this along with the parts that are on it now / where it's going. And then hopefully that helps some people with their Mustang build and avoids the mistakes that I made to get to this point. That being said, what I have on my car isn't the end-all be-all, but I definitely did a lot of research to make sure that I was getting like the best of what I could, or something that was a reasonable price versus quality balance. I'm shooting for the quality side of most things, but I won't hesitate to share the cheapo stuff that I have on this car as well. So this is going to be a long one, so I'm going to try to be as quick as possible, but I'm looking at this light right here to see if I need it. Maybe we'll come grab that in a second. So first and foremost, I'm going to go like front to back here. So I have this Tubular Bumper Bar. This is from a company that I forgot the name of, but it's just a generic Tubular Bumper Bar. Now, with drifting, this cannot be used as a tow point. I want everybody to know that. This I bought a long time ago. This I bought in like 2014. But you can see there's these accordions on the radiator support, and they bend very easily. So if you try to tow with this and your car is like stuck on something, you're just going to rip the accordion right off of the car and probably damage this core support. The one downfall to Mustangs over sort of another more robust car or something, or even 240s, is Mustangs, the core support's really flimsy and chintzy. On 240s, they're fortunate. They have sort of a tow hook on the frame rail right up front here, and you can actually tow from that. But with this car, towing from the front provides very hard to do. So when you enter a competitive level, just really consider that your front tow point needs to be a lot stronger. What I'm going to be doing is leaving the stock frame rails and core support for now, but I'm going to be cutting this off and just putting a bash bar on the front here. Obviously, with most bash bar setups in the pro level, you're going to have an inner bash bar that's a solid permanent piece, and then you'll have like the outer parts that are supposed to get damaged that bolt to that. So I try not to hit anybody. I haven't changed it because I don't hit anybody in the front, but that will be changed eventually. So full disclosure there, I obviously have my headlights in here. They're not fogged up. That's just reflection. You don't need fancy headlights to drift, but dang, they look cool. With the grill, this is all I've done for the grill. Is it's just zip tied through those two holes and those two holes, and it just stays on there. There's little pins in the bottom that sit in the bumper, yada, yada, yada. Done and done. Front bumper, 3 holes drilled in my fender, 3 holes drilled in the bumper. I just zip tie it on there. And then I zip tie it through the horn holes right here that are on the bumper as well. I don't think you need anything more than that. If you want to put fancy fasteners, by all means, go nuts. I think why spend the money if you don't have to. I'm going to see if I have a flashlight really quick here. I should have a flashlight somewhere. I want to be able to point some of this stuff out. Nope. Where is my flashlight? Oh well, we'll try to live without it for now. Man, there's a lot of people in this one. So the engine stuff, this is all very arbitrary. Like obviously you guys get that. What I've done though, these are a few things that I've done to make like the engine bay a lot nicer, this whole ordeal a lot easier. Man, I do really want a light. Hold on, I got this. I got this, guys. Bear with me. This video is gonna be terrible. I grab the really big light. So, almost good. I should set this up beforehand. Sorry everybody. This is a terrible video. This is why you can never do YouTube. Because I can't set stuff up at all. It just comes to me in my brain and I want to do it. Let me just plug this stew-head in. It's so bad. Here we go. Here's my light. Cool beans. Good to go. Super bright now. Alrighty. So, now I just need to hang this somewhere. Nope. Alright. So, what I did to make a lot of the stuff in the engine bay easier is I took the top overflow tank off of this thing. So this is like very like 96 to 04 4.6 specific, but I feel like if you're looking at me for drifting a Mustang, you probably have something very similar. Setting this light down. So you can see this overflow tank is gone. What I did is I just got a generic overflow with a pressurized cap. You need a pressurized cap, but I ran it off of the connection from the factory. So this is a Mishimoto radiator, but it's factory style. So you could put the overflow tank on here. But I ran this hose back to this little doohoo back here. So this is a tiny little can off of eBay. It was like 20 bucks with a lid. And then we just welded all the extra ports closed. So all this has is this overflow right here, which is post this, you know what I mean? So this is a pressurized cap, and the plunger of it's past this point. So only when this gets over pressurized does it let fluid go out of that. And then that's just my overflow that's dumping right out into the wheel well. And then that line connection right here goes to the bottom of that. So this is basically a reservoir instead of the big, huge reservoir that you have. So the Mishimoto radiator does a really good job of cooling. It has enough fluid in it to stay cool. So that system works out really well, and it cleans up that big tank that sits here. The stock fan is actually really awesome. It does like quite a few CFM. I forgot what it was, but this big fan runs quite a lot of air through it, so I never wanted to change that. The battery is relocated. I'll show you that in the back over there. So this is all like really cleaned out right here. The ABS module is gone. You can see that. And what I did with that is I actually took all the lines out, and then I rerouted the lines from this T that I have over here. So you can see down in here, if I get my light over here a little bit, it's hard to see. Can I see it? Man, that's hard to get access into. But there is a T-fitting right there, that gold thing right there. And so that T-fitting is for the front lines. So I just did some finagling with that. To be honest, I don't remember all what I did with the brake lines. All I know is that the stock lines are actually stainless with some like coating on them. And it's a pain in the butt to use the flaring tool and put flares on them. So if I were to do this all over again, I honestly would just run all new hard lines. That's how much of a pain in the butt it was, and it broke my flare tool because the stainless is more strong than the copper or whatever ones that they sell you at the auto parts store. So that's done. What else? Oh, the big thing with this one, when I did the engine, I put an aluminum block back in this instead of the cast block. So from the Ford trucks that had a 4.6, some of them had an aluminum block, so I picked one up. There's little like differences here and there, but I used everything from the iron block Mustang stuff, is like the timing cover and the intake manifold and that sort of stuff. So I didn't deal with the complications. I was just using the long block for that. And they're really cheap, and you save 100 pounds. So all this expensive advice that I learned, you're getting for free right now, so save this video. What else? I have the, it's all, stock stuff. EGR block off. That's pretty basic. My headlight stuff is all, I just cut and spliced it, so it's all easy to plug in, but that's kind of like drift car stuff. Like your stock car, you don't want to really mess with that. Now onto the suspension stuff. Bring my light down here. So these are my spindles and control arms. These, I honestly think that cutting and welding the stock ones puts you at a pretty big disadvantage just because the roll center is so goofed on them. I've had them, and you have to run a little bit higher. Like the key with running the suspension on these things is so that the control arms aren't pointing towards the sky. The more the control arms point upwards, the more you're actually messing up your roll center. So higher is better if you have stock spindles. That being said, free pitch for me here. I do have a stock set of spindles that are cut and welded for true Ackerman. And they're sitting right there, and they're for sale. Really nice welds. I still have those. I don't want them anymore. But if you want some budget Mustang spindles, they're there. So probably like, I don't know, $250. Sure. And then you can buy a set of my control arms too, and then you'll be good to go. I ran the same control arms with those cut and welded spindles, and it works out pretty awesomely. I have field coil overs. This one's loose right now. I just put it back in because I had them check it out. Honestly, I think there's only two options for this car if you're going to spend the money. It's either feel, which are roughly $1,300. I like them because they're local. I know Odie personally. They'll rebuild them. They'll check them over. They have Swift springs. They spec it out for a drift Mustang without a sway bar. So this was already tested. Like this kit was like developed by Eddie Zapata, who has a drift Mustang. Granted, his has an iron block and a supercharger, but I like it a little bit stiff in the front, so it works out perfectly for me. That being said, you can always call Odie, spec out whatever you want, and he'll get you what you want. Now, the other side of that, I would say that BC is another great option. At $990, it's probably the best, cheapest coilover setup that you can get. However, as their like spec'd out kit, the spring rates are too soft, much too soft for a drift car, and even soft for a street car. But that's because they want a comfortable ride. No coilover company wants their customers to be like, oh, these are too soft. Odie's regular kit, I think, matches up with theirs. It's just the drift kit's a little bit more aggressive. So I know that if you go through Injuku or if you go through BC directly, you can call them and you can spec out your spring rates. I'm not sure how long it takes to get them. Odie's very fast with theirs. So those are the pluses and minuses. Odie, if you're watching, or anybody if you're watching, if you want to sponsor me, I'll only talk about your product. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm giving you guys the fair aspect here. I'm not sponsored by anybody. That's why I'm trying to give you this fair shot. With my spindles, you have to run cover brakes. That being said, I think the cover brakes are amazing. If you don't know, these cover brakes mount up to the factory mounting locations, and you just run a bigger rotor and then that floating caliper. So I think they're fantastic. I wish I would have known about this upgrade a long time ago. It's a very cheap upgrade. I can send you links to stuff if you message me, but I'm not going to blast where to get this stuff on here. I have a QA1 K-member, which I think this is the best damn K-member you could buy. And again, nobody's paying me to say this stuff. This is all just free advertising right now. And this is my last go at free advertising, but there's a QA1 K-member, so this rack mount, they actually have an adjustable rack mount, so there's like little slotted keys behind this, and you can move the rack up and down. And you might be like, why do I need that? Well, there's two things, right? If you have like a different oil pan, or if you have a swapped car, or if you have, just the clearance issues right here, that's number one, so that your rack is out of the way of that. But more importantly, when your suspension's all bolted up, you can see on that side, my tie rod is perfectly parallel with my control arm. And that's how you eliminate bump steer. And instead of like trying to finagle with a big, huge like bump steer correction at the spindle, you can just change it at the steering rack and not have to worry about a big moment on the end of your on the end of your tie rod. Now I have double shear tie rod, so I'm okay, but on a stock spindle, you only have a bolt in one, it's threaded into it. And so like the longer distance you have between the actual tie rod and then the spindle that you're bolting to, that's just providing more force and more deflection at the tie rod when you're correcting bump steer on that end rather than on this end. So there's a lot of beef about the QA1 being strong enough or not. I'll tell you, you can look at the rest of my oil pan and see how many dents are in that, and that was brand new before the last time I went out. This QA1 K-member survived just fine going off-road on Horse Thief. If you're slamming your K-member into stuff, I think you have much better things to worry about than how strong the K-member is. Also, that being said, with control arms, you got to be careful with how strong you make a control arm because you actually want that to be your bend point. People try to make them really super duper strong, but realistically, the stronger that you make that, the more you're pushing the force into your K-member, or even worse, your chassis, which it's much easier to replace maybe $100 and some or $200 control arm than it is to replace a $400 or $500 K-member, or even worse, bending your chassis. So remember that something's got to bend or break when you hit stuff or when you crash, and you want it to be the easy to access, the easy to replace stuff. Another thing is switch out your fasteners so they're all the same size head. You know what heads they are, etc., etc. Quick little doodad, my power steering line, because of the potential to remove the engine, the power steering line that's on there from the factory is a pain in the butt, and you can't get it off without pulling the pulley off, and that takes forever, so I converted it to AN, and now I have an AN line from there to the what the heck is it? Hydro Boost. So this is just a quick wrench off, and then it's off, so I can get access to things in there, or I can just pull the power steering pump off, etc. I got long tube headers that are all beat up, YOLO, but more importantly, what you can see on there are some V-band connectors. This is like a must-have in racing because of the quickness that you can remove and replace your exhaust. The flanges that I've used before are a pain in the butt, and V-bands are the way to go. Not to mention, you can just buy a replacement V-band instead of, the welded flange that you have on there gets ground down, and then you're screwed with like a welded flange you have to now cut off and re-weld. You can just replace the V-band. You can see mine already beat up, but the mating surfaces underneath those are not beat up. So you can just replace the V-bands and go on with your day. That being said, also Canton road race oil pan, and has internal trapdoors and baffles and stuff like that to prevent the oil from sloshing around, and keeps all the oil where it needs to be. I don't think you need to go this crazy, but it's a very good insurance policy against oil starvation, especially in drifting. What else we got here? I'm talking my face off, dude. Thanks, Jake. So, as you can see down here, Fender Liners are out. That's still there, and I don't like that. You can see that's a long time ago, that tire rub right there. It doesn't do that anymore, but those are going to get cut out eventually. Anyway, no Fender Liners. Nobody needs Fender Liners. Closed up all the HVAC. That's all gone. I was going to continue too with the radiator thing. So along with doing all that stuff to the radiator, when you remove this stuff from the inside, you have to bypass those two connections that are there for the heater core. And so what I did is I just shortened the hose, actually, that was from the bottom one to the heater core, and I've ran it up to the top port. So you can see that's that loopy guy right there. And that just allows the coolant to flow from one side of the head to or one head to the other, and that's the block to the head. Sorry, the intake manifold, and that's for the heater core that was there before. And now, I got too many vehicles. Just so you guys know, full disclosure, 4 vehicles. That one's all apart. This one's blown fork seal. This thing's getting the rear end rebuilt in it. And then my truck is like the only thing that I'm driving. But Still stuff to do on that guy. There's a cover on the car though, so at least I'm halfway decent. Alright, now in here I have simple Sparco Evo 2 Plus seats with race clip harnesses. It is the poor man's racing seat setup of choice, especially if you're over 6 foot tall. These guys are the winners, a very cheap deal. Race Clip is pretty awesome. They do a lot of deals, a lot of like really good stuff for people that want to get into racing and not break the bank doing it. There's a fire extinguisher in there, and then I have my handbrake. My handbrake is just literally screwed or bolted through the tunnel. The stock handbrake is completely removed, and then that's hardlined from there to a T in the back, which I'll get to later. Pretty basic though, it's just bolted through the trans tunnel, and that's about it. It doesn't flex too much. I don't want to put like a lot of pressure on it, but just the handle is really flexing right there. Like the whole dealio flexes a little bit, but there's my magnet. Wow, that's awesome. Good thing I did this video. Found my magnet. So it flexes a little bit, I won't lie to you guys, but the easy solution to that would just be grind off a little paint, weld a plate on there, and call it a day, but I have never found an issue with it. There is an MGW shifter from Pete on my T45. That is just a piece of sheet aluminum that I cut out and then wrapped in vinyl and then matched up the holes on. Same thing with my airbag delete, which is off right now, but you can see in here my cage goes all the way through, obviously, so there's nothing actually back here. It's just a tube, and then my dash sits on top of that. And we did cutouts on the side, so it would kind of sit down nice on there. But you can see the wires dangling there. That's actually the wire for my SCTX4. I've left it in the car permanently, so I just have to plug the box in whenever I want to check something instead of having to find the OBD2 port. Because the OBD2 port is like way back there now, hidden, instead of down underneath the dash where it normally would be. My paint job is terrible, by the way. If you watch this video, you're going to see all the shitty paint I did. Doors are cut out, and then my door handles are just zip tied in there. Nothing fancy, but then again, what the hell do you need? You don't need anything. Surprise, surprise, a drift car with stock mirrors. I don't know why people change their mirrors out, but the brackets for these seats, by the way, the Sparcos are sitting on Racecraft seat brackets that I had to modify a little bit, but Racecraft seat brackets are ones that are made specifically for this car, and they do not require the use of secondary brackets. So I wanted to really eliminate all the need for extra stuff and all the bolts and et cetera, et cetera. So I went with these Racecraft brackets, and then modified them. The only downside is they're divorced underneath, so I had to weld a cross brace. I would show you, but it's really impossible to get underneath there. This car cover's in my way. So, back here, we have my Moroso battery box. And then I actually have my solenoid set up for my starter and for my kill switch. So instead of having a big clunky kill switch on the window or on the wiper tray like most people do, I actually run a tiny little switch and then use a big 300 amp solenoid, like a continuous solenoid, to keep the hot wire back here instead of running the hot wire all the way up and then having a potential for that starting a fire, getting cut, or anything like that. So right now, the only hot wire in the car goes from this battery box to that solenoid right there, and it's maybe 8 inches long. So, keep the big hot wires as short as possible. Keep the switch not as clunky. So I'll show you that in a second here. Leave that light totally right there. That'll do it. Oh, jeez. So, my kill switch is literally just this simple little toggle switch right here. And I leave my headlights on all the time just so I know when my kill switch is on or off. But yeah, it's just a tiny little switch that controls that solenoid back there. So instead of having the big actuated ones with like the key thing in it. I just use that. And most tech places have okayed that. So until they tell me no, I'm going to leave it. I can't ride on Sunday. I got a lot of stuff I got to do, but otherwise I would. And then you can see my Handbrake tee back there with stainless lines from there. Honestly, moving forward, I'm only going to set people up with all stainless lines. It seems to be the standard across most of the Formula Drift cars, and they have no problems. So no hard lines really needed for those Handbrake setups. And then I will I'm going to develop a kit, like a Handbrake kit for these things. I already have all the parts, I just haven't bought them, but you can see I'm using a 10mm banjo with an AN adapter. Conversely, we can also just thread directly into the caliper like Nissans do, but that might be a clearance thing. So I kind of like the 10mm banjo, just kind of keeps the same factory approach as that one. But what else is inside? So the roll cage done by Grimm. Then I have an energy hub adapter and then a quick release. And then that's it, stock cluster. Oh, Mustang stuff over there on the floor. Let's see if I can throw my light in there really quick. We're going to go to the other side. Bear with me, guys. You're getting all the Mustang information at this point. The engine's great, man. It runs awesome. I just need to drive this thing. So, by the way, I love cut doors. They're like the lightest things ever. So, Mustang people will understand the frustration with the pedal setup. So, first of all, the gas pedal is always lower than the brake pedal, and then the clutch pedal is always like super duper high. Now, you can see that they all look like they're at the same level. There's a little bit of difference, but they're a lot closer than they are factory. Now, the clutch pedal is a combination of things, right? So we use an adjustable quadrant, which I don't know if we're going to be able to get up in there. It's so hard to get in here. There we go. There's the adjustable quadrant. So you need a clutch quadrant, but more importantly, you need a adjustable clutch cable to get the adjustment that you want to get the pedal down to where it needs to be and still have the appropriate engagement and disengagement. So you can see my pedal's got a little bit of play, but when it's like right at the bottom, it's dead even with the brake pedal. So instead of lifting my foot super duper high, if I'm left foot braking to put it back on here, I just right in between the two. And then the gas pedal is even easier. So these always have play upwards. Mine doesn't have it anymore because I fixed it. But the cable is a little sloppy from the factory. So literally all you do is get a chunk, my phone's in the way, but you just get a chunk of plastic tube and zip tie it around the cable to take all that slack out. That's literally all that's done to my gas pedal. But you can see there's no like play in the gas pedal anymore. Like it doesn't come forward like much at all. But if you pick your gas pedal up, it's gonna like move like 3 inches. But all you have to do is get a chunk of plastic tube, cut it in like a slit down the side of it, and then put it over the cable before the head. You can see the head sticking up there. I can't get into my floorboard anymore. I'm pretty much jammed in here. And then I just put a crap ton of zip ties on it to keep it in place. You can see there's at least 3 zip ties on it, if not more. But that's it. That's how you fix your gas pedal. So now you know Mustang stuff, yo. And then right here we have a Maximum Motorsports solid steering shaft. That is a huge purchase. If you don't have a solid steering shaft, I highly suggest that you get one, especially if your steering feels a little goofy. Those things, oh man, one of the best butt dyno mods I've ever had. Just really feels so much better than the factory one. Oh, man, you guys are getting like the $1 million pieces of advice right now. So let me switch back to the other side and continue on my journey of Mustang stuff. This video is so long. I gotta fish my light back out of here. So let's go underneath real quick. And you'll see I have subframe connectors. With the cage, it's not really necessary, but it's nice because, as you can see, they're a pretty good prevention of beer canning your floor pans. Like you can see, that's a major scrape city, and I'd much rather be scraping those on the ground than the floor of my car. So they're really nice for that. It's also protecting my exhaust. You can see I have an H pipe, and then they're just dumps in the back. And they're covered in transmission fluid, which is super awesome. But hey, you know, rust proofing. But Mustang stuff, there's always the debate of X or H pipe. An X pipe is what makes them really loud and raspy, and an H pipe is what make that low, like real, like bubbly sound that you hear from like trucks and like you know, like you'll notice like an H pipe is that like blah 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 blah, and then the X pipe is a real raspy, crackly on the top end. The benefits of an H pipe or torque on the bottom. The benefits of an X pipe is it allows it to breathe higher up. So if you were to look at the torque or like the dyno graphs of an H pipe versus an X pipe, you're going to have more torque down low with an H, and then you're going to have more horsepower up high with an X pipe. So you can pick and choose, but the sound is really the dominating factor, and I don't like the sound of X pipes. So I always go with an H pipe on a V8. I have now, super duper important, and I always forget to tell people about this, but if you drive a Mustang and you beat the crap out of it, and you have, especially if you have aftermarket control arms, you need to buy these reinforcements, like this one and the upper one. Like you have to buy those and have them welded in. These are called torque or battle box reinforcements or torque box reinforcements, but you need those. Like this, the unibody of this car like gets destroyed, especially by drifting. And if you don't reinforce them, this has reinforcements all the way around it, and then the upper ones have reinforcement in it too. But if you don't reinforce them, you will tear them out, and then your whole chassis is garbage. I've done it before on a different car. Now, my aftermarket control arms, you might see, well, the booger welds on it from Jeff, but that's okay. So I'm switching control arms because I don't need spring pockets anymore. But the key to this is that you should be running, if you want to run one end solid, that's fine, but you need to have the other end be an articulation. So there's a rod end on the other side. Do not buy the urethane bushing control arms. I repeat, do not buy the urethane bushing control arms. They are garbage. They will ruin your car faster than anything else you can put in that car. They will destroy it. This is called a quadrubind suspension because you're over constraining the axle by having 4 control arms. And when you put the rubber bushings in them, it doesn't allow the axle to articulate. It just allows the axle to go up and down. However, when you turn a corner, when you go over a bump, whatever it is, your axle doesn't want to go all just up and down. It wants to turn and articulate and that sort of thing. So you need to have articulation. You can see right here, these are my upper control arms. They're both rod ends. Now, if you have a street car, maybe you don't want solid suspension, but any race car, you definitely do want solid suspension so that you feel everything and that there's no deflection and changes in suspension geometry without, like, you know, a predicted path. So do not put urethane bushings in the car. Feel coil overs in the back, true coil overs. You might as well do true coil overs. My axle is not pictured, but when you do true coil overs in the rear of a Mustang, you must use the Maximum Motorsports reinforcement brackets. Nobody else makes them that I know of, but you have to use those reinforcement brackets or you'll tear the suspension mounts off of the axle. And again, a little bit goes a long way. Like an ounce of prevention prevents a pound of mistakes in the future. Right now, you can see I have a Panhard bracket on here. So there's a Maximum Motorsports Panhard bracket on here. I've used that for a long time. I actually love the Panhard bar, but my buddy Pete makes a Wattslink setup, which is going on here actually when the diff is done. So this week I'm pulling this Panhard bracket off, setting it up for the Wattslink brackets, and then we'll be doing that instead of a Panhard bar. So if you want to buy a Panhard bar, it's for sale. Stock calipers for the rear, stock calipers with a handbrake, crappy, you know, eBay pads or whatever it is, nothing special. Handbrake works great. What else we got back here? I'm trying to figure out, pinion snubber's still there, but all the pinion weight is off the diff. Everything extra that was on the diff that I didn't need is off of it. Stock fuel tank with a Walbro 255 in there. stock fenders, stock wheel wells. You can see where they're welded from the cage inside. The bumper is just held on by like two nuts, and then the zip ties right here on the inside. Try not to knock this stunt bike over. And then all we have left really is my spoiler, which is you kind of line it up and then drill the holes. I probably will put them in there eventually, but it's a pretty straightforward install, kind of just for sale since I know that nobody's actually going to buy it anyway. But then there's some FTR rods in the back, so fully torqued racing with their finishing hardware on the end right there. And then the bumper is just cut out. There's a lot more to go on, like removing the like the hood, like the inner liner of the hood, and then not the inner liner, but like the inner layer of fiberglass, and then the same thing with the trunk. But as is with wheels and gas in it and everything, without me in it, it was $2,740. So there's still more weight to go, but it's a really light car, and that's what I have for basically my drift setup. Pretty simple. It's all stock body. It's just all like functional stuff, and I hope that some of these things that I've mentioned maybe have like clarified things for you, and made it a lot easier for you to make decisions on what you're buying for your car instead of taking the wild guesses. I'm sure I'm forgetting stuff, but I think that's all I can remember for now. There will be more coming, but I hope this helps. Trying to flip the camera around. I hope that all that information helps. Let me know if you have more questions, and tag me in your sweet Mustang drift car. All right. Thanks for watching, guys. See you later.